read a little anecdote from Suzuki's life. When Suzuki greeted Casals, he told them that he had been his pupil for a long time. Casals looked at him in surprise and said, "I don't know you." And then Suzuki, with a twinkle in his eyes, said, "I've been your pupil through your records, which I listen to daily." Okay, so this, I pulled this from this article, and all on the history of the Suzuki method. And I'm gonna stop sharing now. So that gives you a little background of where we're coming from with how important the record is in practice, how important listening is in your journey with the Suzuki method. Now I've inputted into the chat here, you'll see a parent talk handout. So all of the, or not all, but a lot of the links that I'll refer to today and some ideas are in that parent talk handout. This won't necessarily be saved, but I can send it out in an email, but go ahead and just click on that and download it to your computer so that when the chat closes, you still have access to it. Okay, so we're going to move on into which recordings to even use. I've told you how important recordings are, which recordings to even use. Oh, excuse me, I need to back up just a little bit. So when it comes to how much time you're going to be doing, just strapping that tape recorder onto your child and letting them run around outside, your comfort with how much listening is in your child's life is completely your decision, in my opinion. I think that, sorry, let me make sure everybody has access to this. Did that file come through in the chat? Great. Okay, so when navigating, how do you know how much to do? How much do you feel comfortable with? Make sure that you are making a decision for your family about how much screen and technology you have in your life. And we'll also be coming back to that later. Okay, so which recordings to use? I think the most invaluable resource for this is, and again, I'm going to screen share this particular web page. This will do more service than an entire parent talk. So this is on Alfred Music, and it's linked to in the handout that I just sent out. But it's the Suzuki School audio downloads from Alfred Music. And on here, they have every volume listed for violin, viola, cello, bass, piano. They also have every recording that's ever been made by this copyrighted institution. So we have the original Shinichi Suzuki recordings, David Nadian, David Zerone, William Prusel, and Hilary Hahn. This goes through here, even as it gets through books that haven't been recorded by certain people, right? So Hilary Hahn has only been recorded up through book 3. Then starting in book 4, you only have these 3 options, and then these 2 options through book 8. And then they say like book 9 and 10 are the Mozart concertos. Now for the violists, you have the same thing, cellist, bass, and piano, okay? I love this list for a couple of reasons. One, it has direct links to the Amazon and the iTunes pages to buy these recordings. It's not so easy to type in, and I promise you I've tried Hilary Hahn, iTunes download, or Suzuki download iTunes. I think this is the landing page that you want to go to find. Another reason that I really like this, and this is specific to the violin world, is that many people don't feel comfortable listening to the Bill Prusel recordings, which you can look up, but it is a dark spot in the Suzuki community. So you have your alternatives in book 1. Obviously, just go ahead and listen to the Hilary Hahn recording. But when it comes down to book 4, book 5, book 6, you can also see your alternatives, right? Bill Prusel will be the first one listed, but you could also go back into the past and listen to these other ones and find the links for MP3 downloads. All of these recordings are in chronological order. So Hilary Hahn's is going to be the most recent and updated with the revised edition that's available online for you to buy. And then the second most recent would be Bill Krusel, and then David Cerrone, and then David Nadian, and then the oldest being Shinichi Suzuki. I expect usually your teacher would say to listen to the most revised one, except in the cases of Bill Krusel. Okay, so this is the number one spot to go to for where to get your records to listen to. Okay. Now, next up, I want to talk about kind of a listening modality. So when we talk about in general listening, and your teacher's going to walk you through this, but I want to talk to you how I think about it. We have, in my mind, 3 different listening categories. So the first one would just be background music. Having that recording on basically as often as possible, but in a non-intentional way. Just having music going on, playing as often as possible so that the child is downloading the music. The next level would be passive intensive listening. So when I talk about passive intensive, I'm thinking of some sort of sub-selection of curated music that you're choosing to listen to, but you're going to listen to it passively. So an example of this would be, my child is learning Gasikavat. I'm going to play Gasikavat 10 times in a row in the background while she does her coloring book, something like that. So you curate something very specific, but you just chill with it. You just let it happen in the background. And then the third category would be active intensive listening. So you're selecting something very intentionally to listen to, and then you're actively engaging with it. That could be you're right next to the speaker and you are listening to the direction of the music up and down, which instruments are playing, like in a dialogue with the child about what's going on in the music. It could be having a score open and reading the music while the music is going. It could be fingering through on your instrument while the music is going. But these are the 3 modalities that I would expect you're doing or want to be doing throughout the course of your week. Now, there are lots of different ways to get there, how to facilitate these 3 modes of listening, but it's important to know that we have these 3 categories in mind. So when we say as teachers, or when I say as a teacher, listen, I don't just mean press play in the car on Tuesdays. I mean, engage in these 3 different modes, right? That you are doing background listening, that you are doing passive intensive listening, and then you're also doing active intensive listening, okay? So now let's talk a little bit about different like philosophies of technology for how you want to have this in your life. So I'm going to go ahead and call these 3, again, it's 3 different philosophies of technology. I'm going to call it low tech, mid tech, and high tech. And it definitely goes in order of complexity. Obviously, low tech is low complexity, high tech is high complexity. It probably also goes in order of frustration. So low tech is the least frustrating. High tech is going to be very frustrating to keep sorted in our modern digital context. And again, I want you to pick whichever one suits you. And I think all of them will serve our actual listening mode needs. So you'll be able to do background listening, passive intensive, and active intensive, no matter what philosophy of tech you have, low, medium, or high. I also think that you can mix these up, of course. So I'm going to talk to you about low tech. Now, I generally think of myself as like a moderate to high tech sort of person. I like knowing how to do things with technology. I have the iPhone, I have the Bluetooth, all these things. But recently I've been caring for a 1-year-old in the mornings. He's 16 months now. And when I met the family of the child who I care for, the child, which blew me away, the child had never really listened to music ever. Occasionally the parents would hum to the child, but he'd never listened to recorded music. And because of the pandemic, he hadn't been going into restaurant facilities or anywhere that he would have listened to music like on the radio or something. It's kind of boggled my mind. And then I brought up that, I'm a music teacher. I love music. What would it be like to introduce music into his life? And his mother gave me some pretty harsh guidelines. Like, we couldn't have Bluetooth. The sound couldn't come from a screen. The thing powering the music had to be battery power, all of these logistical hoops. And so what we finally settled on is one of those old, like 2006 boombox CD players. Okay, it was like electric blue. And we only had 3 CDs, Suzuki Book 6 and Suzuki Book 7, my old ones, which I provided, and Graceland by Paul Simon. And Hawthorne and I have been listening to these 3 recordings on the CD player for the past few months. And I have to tell you, the relationship that he has with this CD player blows my mind. He's engaging with the pressing play. Remember, this is a 15, 16-month-old. He's engaging with putting the CD in the CD player, and he's dancing with the music that's coming out of it. So this has really changed. I told you I'm sort of mid-tech, high-tech. This has changed what I feel like children are made available to when we give them something like a hands-on CD player to actually use their recordings. So I went ahead and looked up on Amazon how much a CD player Walkman costs, $19. One of these boombox things that we had, that we found secondhand, you can get for like $30. You can go ahead and purchase those physical hands-on devices, have a couple of them, have them around the house, and give the ownership of listening over to your child, that they're the one in charge of the CD, they put the CD into the CD player, they press play. I think that could be really empowering, and my mind has been reopened to this low-tech possibility. Maybe you're already doing this, but for me, it was a big light bulb moment. Now, if you're going to go with this option, the downfall is that you need to have a lot of copies of the CD, right? So you actually have to buy the physical CD multiple times to have one for each CD player, and then also have one in the car and be going back and forth. If you do the digital downloads, which we'll talk about in just a second, you only need to buy it once, right? You buy the digital download and then you have it on your devices. The hands-on CD, you're going to need to buy multiple copies of, running you about $10 at every volume in the repertoire. That could get somewhat expensive, even if the CD player is pretty cheap. So that's the simple low-tech option, not frustrating at all, something to consider bringing into your life, buying your kid that CD player. Now, the next option, the next tier, is what I would call the mid-tech tier. And this one's kind of the most, not most complex, but this one is where it gets more frustrating, more complex, right? So this middle tech tier, I would say, is what we're all pretty much doing, which is the phone and the Bluetooth speakers and the computer, just like what you have, right? So maybe I could see, well, not many people have their video on, but I'm curious if you could just drop in the chat what streaming platform you use for most music. YouTube, Amazon, iTunes, just type into the chat. What do you use, not for Suzuki music, but just music in general? I personally use Spotify. Yeah, interesting. We have one YouTube, yeah, Spotify, YouTube. Same. So ever since I got that college discount, college kid discount, I've been on Spotify. Now, we do have one Amazon Music, Pandora, cool. So this is where it gets tricky, right? Almost, and this is hard to believe, almost all music ever recorded is available to us in Spotify and iTunes for our monthly subscription, right? Except Suzuki music. except our Suzuki recordings. And believe me, this is so frustrating to me, to teachers especially, but I can't believe how frustrating it is to you. So if you have your Spotify subscription, that will not at all cover your needs as a Suzuki parent. And what's even worse, well, it's not the worst, but when you go to Spotify and you search for Suzuki, something will come up. And in my opinion, actually a pretty decent option, but not the option that that is the most ideal. So if you're in book 1, 2, and 3 for violinists, or any of the books for any other instrument, your recordings are going to need to be downloaded on iTunes or Amazon, or you're going to need to buy the physical CD. For the violinists in the room who are looking for an option beyond, or book 4 and beyond, I think one of those good options is the option that does come up on your streaming service, which is the Suzuki Evergreens by Takako Nishizaki. She is a former student of Dr. Suzuki's, and up until Hilary Hahn's recording was the only, as far as I know, female recorded artist, which I think is special and something worth acknowledging. I actually enjoy these recordings, but you need to know that they are not the revised recordings, and in many cases they don't exactly match what we've come to expect from the recordings. I think that they're great used for background recordings, have in the background, especially because in this Takako Nishizaki recording, they also include the traditional way it would have been performed. So for example, Hunter's Chorus, which is typically performed by a sung choir, they do the violin recording, but they also do the real sung choir recording. So if you want your child to be able to hear songs in their original format, go for it. Have this on in the background, play these Suzuki Evergreen recordings. But also know that in these streaming services that you're not going to be able to get the Hilary Hahn recordings and all of the other standards for violin and cello. So what do? So you follow the link that I showed you from the alfredmusic.com, and you go, if you're doing this mid-tech level, and you buy the real download, and then you make sure that you have your download in iTunes or through Amazon. And then how do you access it when you want to practice? Well, you put it on some sort of like transportable device. An iPhone with the apps downloaded, an Android phone with the apps downloaded, where you can access them on the cloud or physically download it onto the device. But this gets challenging, right? If you have multiple family members with different accounts, and also if your child is not using your phone or is listening when you're not there, or listening when you want to listen to something on your phone. So here, one option is actually to get an MP3 player. Again, they're not that expensive. You can get a 16 gig MP3 player for $19, again, off of Amazon, but any options are fine. And that could be your like mid-tech version of the CD player, the one that you would carry around with the headphones. You could have an MP3 player. Here, you'd have to do the middle leg work of making sure that your iTunes or Amazon download is actually synced up to that MP3 player, but that could be their dedicated device. And that MP3 player could hook up to a speaker or headphones that they want to use. Of course, also here, if your child already has an iPad or a Chromebook, you could try to also sync onto those devices. Again, making sure that you manage the multiple login issue. So whichever person is buying all of the iTunes recordings, like the actual, like the digital recording from iTunes or Amazon, all of those recordings, you'll need to be logged on to that account to have access to them. Finally, I'll say in this category, something that I think, and I see a lot of it in the comments, but something that I think a lot of people opt to do because it's frictionless is to just go to YouTube and type in Suzuki recording, Suzuki Bore, Suzuki Gasakavat. And you'll find videos there. You'll find teachers who've recorded videos of themselves playing the piece. This is frictionless, so I understand why it's done, but I do not think that this is the optimal way to go about listening and learning. There is a lot that can be communicated to the child, as we already discussed in the function of listening: artistry, tone, intonation, technique. And many of the teachers who are posting videos of themselves playing their recordings on YouTube are not aligned with the teaching principles that the teachers in the school use necessarily. In some cases they are, but in many cases they're not. So the child might not be getting the reference recording that we expect when we say listen, if they're using the YouTube recordings to do that. Now, we have mitigated that problem somewhat by some of the violin faculty members getting together and recording videos of ourselves playing the music, which I have hyperlinked in the handout up at the top of the chat. So you could go ahead and use that as a resource, and I'll touch on that later as well. But in general, I would not use YouTube at all as a reference recording. So moving on, we've talked a little bit about that low tech, just get a CD player. Mid tech, trying to navigate the challenges of using your phone and streaming services and Bluetooth speakers and such. I'm going to talk briefly about high tech. If anybody does this, they should write me an email and tell me about it, because I think it's a really interesting idea, but I don't know anyone who has done it. Now with like the Alexa Echo Dots and the HomePods, it is quite possible to automate listening to your reference recording. Okay, so what you can do is you can create a playlist in iTunes out of the downloads that you've had, that you've purchased, and you can automate in your home settings that whenever your GPS phone walks in the door at a certain time, it's going to activate playing this playlist. You can also just say, hey, Alexa, play my book one playlist, or Siri, or what have you. I think that this is like a potential interesting option for listening. It takes the hands out of it, takes a lot of the friction out of it. And if you're into that sort of like tech optimization, it might be for you. Now, this is, you don't have to completely remodel your house in order to do this. Another potent way to vitalize your listening is to use playlists. Now, unfortunately, and based on my research, I can't find a way, and again, email me if you do know this, for teachers to share playlists of downloaded materials with their students. So for example, if you think about Spotify, a lot of you said you use Spotify as your platform. I can make a playlist. I can copy the link to that playlist. I can send it to Sarah, and Sarah can open it up and listen to exactly the songs that I had in my playlist in the order that I had in my playlist. I can't think of a way that teachers can make a playlist out of a downloaded Suzuki repertoire and send. Which unfortunately means that the legwork of creating this playlist is put onto the curator of the device, aka parents, I'm sorry. So if you wanted to, and I think that this could really level up your listening, go ahead and create in a couple of different formats. You could do like Suzuki Intensive Listening 1, Suzuki Intensive Listening 2, Suzuki Intensive Listening 3. And you can do, say, like 5 repetitions of your 3 most recent pieces, right? So you're not just hitting the repeat button, you're actually having it go through 5 of Gasikavat, and then 5 of chorus, and then 5 of musette, and then done. So that way, when you walk into your house and say, Alexa, play Suzuki Intensive Listening 1, then it's automated that the speakers start playing 5 of each. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? So you can be very selective about how much you want the child to listen, and also when the music turns off. Because I think that's a non-discussed portion of listening, is when to stop listening to the music effectively, right? Not just when do we press the play button, but how do we intentionally decide, okay, now our listening for today is over, and we're going to move into a different silent or active part of the day. Okay, and I think playlists could be an easy way, frictionless way to kind of automate that. But unfortunately, you have to do the legwork to start that first. Another creative way to do this is, if in your review practice, you do something like you play all of the minuets in the repertoire that you know, you can make a playlist for that and play along with it. Throw in all of the minuets, or if you want to play every piece in the repertoire by Bach, or if you want to do all of the most difficult, like all the graduation pieces, Suzuki's graduation pieces, etc. You can, all the pieces that start with A, whatever you want to do, you can make interesting combinations in your playlist. Okay, so there we have the low tech option, mid tech option, and high tech option. Let me look at my notes for a second. Okay, so I quickly want to talk about one other sort of supplemental resource that I found incredibly useful, especially in this new year. Pardon me while I get it pulled up. So it's called International Music Teachers Exchange. And it's put together by Kristen Wartberg, who's part of the German Suzuki Association. So it's a little bit removed from our Suzuki Association of the Americas, which we're part of here. But an incredibly verified, important source, a well-respected source. So the International Music Teachers Exchange is a place where they keep this library of listening and accompaniment tracks. And those of you who are here who are my students, you know this well. So you have an option to pay a subscription to this exchange. It is $25 for every 6 months, so basically $50 a year, which can be steep, but I want to show you what's available here. So they have, I think this pays for itself already. They have accompaniment tracks to the violins for volumes 1 through 6, and then also viola tracks and cello tracks. So for example, if my student's in book 1 and they want an opportunity to play along with the pieces in book 1, you can click right here. And here we have, for every piece in book 1, a slow lightly wrote version, medium lightly wrote version, and a lightly wrote performance tempo. So they're giving different terraces of basically speed here. Beautiful background accompaniment that does have violin, and also in other tracks doesn't have, does have violin playing with piano, and then other ones doesn't have violin playing with piano. You can use this for just listening. You can also use this for listening and playing in your review. You can use this for recitals right now. If you don't have the opportunity or the technology to work out with one of our wonderful recital pianists, you could just simply practice with one of these. Let me go ahead and play for you one of these recordings so that you know what it sounds like. Pardon me while I get my sound settings sorted. Sorry. So beautiful, right? High fidelity audio, great recording, very artistic, and an amazing resource for us to have. Again, that the link to the International Music Teachers Exchange is in the handout. So at this point, I'd like to check if there are any questions. Is there a friction point in your listening practice right now that you'd like help with? Is there anything that I touched on that wasn't quite clear?
Catherine, this is Audrey's mom. I cannot download the PDF file you sent from the chat. So I don't know, it's my issue or other person also have this issue.
Yeah, interesting. When I see it in the chat, there's 3 dots to the side, and if you click that, it says open file. And I think that's how you can get to it, and then you could save it from there. But how about we make this plan that I will, when I send out the recording of this, I'll also include the handout.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, so if there are no other questions for now, let's move on to the more personal part of this. So if you don't already, bring out a sheet of paper or your phone or somewhere to take notes. We are going to make, even teachers, maybe if you're willing to engage with me on this, we're going to make a listening plan of action. So I'm thinking of this like your practice chart that you might or might not receive from your teacher, or the tactical notes that you take in your lessons about what to practice for the week, but specifically about listening. Okay. And what I'm so excited about in this listening plan to action is that it's probably not going to change that much, right? Like we're gonna go through a couple of series of questions. You're gonna decide, your action plan. But week to week, it's not going to shift like your violin practice or your instrument practice does. They'll stay pretty steady. So I think it's worth going through this exercise together. So first things first, on your sheet, go ahead and just make a few notes to yourself about which grouping you want to be in. So do you want to be sort of low tech, mid tech, or high tech with your approach to the recordings? And feel free to, blend from both, but actually write out the devices that you're going to use to make the recording come to life for your child. So if it's your iPhone, computer, laptop, and don't forget the thing that makes sound too, the headphones, the Bluetooth speakers, etc. Okay, and then next up, I want you to think through at what time of day does your child or children have access to this device to use to listen to the recording? Is this something that they have ownership of? It's with them all the time? Or is it something that you need to give to them? Okay, and then take as much time as you need. But the next set of questions would be related to if you were able to go to Carrie's talk on Monday, what are the prompts, right? So what is the prompt that's going to cause you to start playing the background music? What is the prompt in your environment, what's already going on in your daily life, that's going to cue you to do passive intensive listening? And what is the prompt that's going to cue you to do active intensive listening? So is it when I get in the car to drive to school, I press play on this X playlist? Or when we sit down to dinner, I'm going to play the Suzuki Evergreens general playlist for background music. Or for something more intensive, after we finish our bow for the final practice, we sit down with the iPad and listen to Gasikavat with the music right next to us 3 times. Something like that. Okay, next question. What do you think it will feel like to listen to this music with your child? This is obviously totally specific to you. This might very well be your motivation to do it. It's a moment of quiet. We're not talking or something, or it could be delight, or it could be soothing. This is what we do before we go to sleep or something like that. I can remember that whenever my mom and I were running late to an appointment, she would always put on the most fast recordings that were available to me at the time. So like the Etude Doubles, or like Witches Dance, these sorts of things. And so we kind of played a game of matching the intensity of the moment to the music that we were listening to. So that was a moment for us to connect with our feelings. Say like, yeah, this feels a little rushed. Okay, so this is our basic listening plan of action. I think it's really important to have written all of these things down, right? In the same way that we write down our practice chart and we communicate with our teachers what is important to us and when are we supposed to do it. Here's your plan for listening. Now, and take note of this, you might have some question marks, right? Like, what does my teacher want me to intensively listen to? And I invite you to ask your teacher at the next lesson, like, what do you want me to have on in the background and what do you want us to have on at the forefront of our attention? Okay, now maybe draw a line or turn over the piece of paper, do a couple of enters or tabs. And now go ahead and take a few minutes to write down, what do you physically need to do from right now until this plan is possible, right? What device do you need to buy? What book do you need to download? What playlist do you need to make? What Bluetooth connection do you need to figure out? What subscription do you need to get? Like, what do you need to do to put this plan into action? Now, if I were me, I would need to take like an hour to get myself all sorted out, just so that there's no other friction any other time. Right? I want to make it as easy as possible to already have the playlist made, to already have it downloaded, to already have everything in place so that it's not an uphill battle, it's just a downhill glide every day with listening. And I'd like to invite you to take the time it's necessary to put this into place. This might be a little bit scandalous, but I think that the time it would take to do one day's practice would be well worth actually giving to listening infrastructure. You know, with my studio, I'd rather you not do a 20-minute practice and just give 20 minutes to buying all of the volumes on iTunes and downloading them to the device and figuring out how to press play. Because as I mentioned, listening is the core of the Suzuki method. And if you're not listening, you're not really doing Suzuki. Take the time to figure all of this technological complexity out, because we want to make our children, our students, experts themselves. We don't want them to look for us, to teachers for expertise. We don't want them to look to their parents for expertise. We want them to look to themselves for expertise, and listening is the vehicle that allows that to happen. Okay, so that's the parent talk for this evening. Happy to stick around for more questions. It's also late and it's the weekend, so happy to say goodbye too. But thank you all so much for joining me.
I would love to just pop in for a second and just say thank you so much, Drake, for a wonderful talk. And also that our next parent talk is going to be on April 22nd at 8 p.m. And Kirsten Marshall is going to talk about value added practice, moving beyond the notes. So we'd love to see you there.
Thanks so much, Drake.
Thank you so much, Drake.
Yeah.
Thank you all. So I'll send out this recording and I'll send out that handout if you had any trouble getting to it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.